Oh, good evening, everyone, and welcome Board District 5's second virtual town hall. My name is Jackie Goldberg, and I am the proud representative of Board District 5. Before we begin, though, I want to take a couple of minutes to go over some housekeeping items.
Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a nuestro foro virtual, el segundo del Distrito 5. Les habló Jackie Goldberg, orgullosa representante del Distrito 5 de la Junta de Educación, y antes de comenzar quisiéramos abordar algunos temas generales.
First of all, you can listen to this webinar in English or Spanish. For Spanish, click the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom window and then select Spanish. We have our wonderful interpreters from the LAUSD translation unit translating and interpreting everything that's being said. So again, if you're at a computer and want to listen in Spanish, click the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom window and then select Spanish.
Primeramente, pueden escuchar este webinario en inglés o en español. Para español, ventana de Zoom y seleccionen español. Tenemos a nuestras maravillosas intérpretes de la unidad de traducciones de LAUSD en traducción simultánea, traduciendo todo lo que se dice. Así que si nos sintonizan desde una computadora y desean escuchar en español, hagan clic en el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de la ventana de Zoom y después seleccionen español.
If you have any trouble switching the language to Spanish using the interpretation button, you can also use your phone to call into our Spanish audio line, which is already up and running. The number and the access code for that are on the invitation to this event.
Si tienen dificultades para cambiar de idioma al español con el botón de interpretación, también pueden utilizar sus teléfonos y llamar a nuestra línea de audio en español, que ya está activada. El número y código de acceso están en la invitación de este.
Second, we have two American Sign Language interpreters joining us this evening. To continue to see them throughout the town hall, please just make sure your Zoom set to the gallery view so that you can see all of us at once. Finally, you might notice that this town hall is a bit different than other Zoom calls you may have been on because only our panelists are visible and audible. As we go through our discussion, though, we invite you to ask questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll then get to as many questions as we can in our brief event, so we ask you to keep the questions brief. That way we can get to as many of them as possible. You can also write your questions in Spanish if you'd like, that's no problem. Also, don't worry about spelling or grammar. We'll get the point of the question. If you're joining us by phone, unfortunately, we cannot take your questions, but you can email questions you have that aren't being asked by others at bd5info@lausd.net, and we'll get back to you in the next few days with your answers. Before I go over how this meeting will unfold, I do want to make one other request. I want to encourage everyone who hasn't yet, please take a moment at the end of our meeting and go to 2020census.gov to complete your census form. It's very important that everyone do this if we want to maintain our budget and if we want to make sure that the funding goes to things that we care about. Now, we're first going to let me introduce our special guest tonight who wanted to stop by and just say a few words. That's board member Scott Schmerlson. I invited him because he chairs the LAUSD's Special Education Committee, and I wanted to give him just a moment to say hello to everybody, and so he is going to follow this and use it, I believe, when we finally have committee meetings again. Scott?
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Board Member Goldberg, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this town hall. So I'm Scott Schmerlson. I am the board member for Board District 3, and I represent the Northwest and Central San Fernando Valley. I represent about 110 schools, And for those of you who don't know, I worked for about 35 years in the district as a teacher, as a counselor, an assistant principal, and a principal before I retired and was elected to the school board. So I am the chair, as Jackie said, of the Special Ed Committee. I work very closely with the Special Ed Division, the Office of General Counsel, and the teachers. And some of my work on the board includes improving the experience for parents in the IEP process and doing early screening for students with dyslexia. So I'm very proud of that. And despite our best efforts, meeting certain special ed requirements is almost impossible to do because of this pandemic and because of distance learning. So now, more than ever, we need to ensure that the state and the federal government support us so we can continue to provide appropriate and accessible education programs to all of our children. I'm very eager to hear from the panelists and questions from the audience. But before I excuse myself to participate as a member of the unseen audience, if you have any questions related to special education, to my committee, or anything else, please email me at scott.schmerelson@lausd.net. Scott.schmerelson@lausd.net, or call my office. We answer the phone, 213-241-8333. Thank you so much, Jackie. I'll go to the unseen audience now. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And I know that you've been at other meetings today, so I'm glad that you're here because I know that listening to what's going on here will help you when you go back to chairing meetings when we're in person.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, so we're going to now hear from two experts in our district. Tony Aguilar, who's LAUSD's Chief of Special Education, Equity and Access. And then we'll hear from Gloria Martinez, who is the UTLA Elementary Vice President, but also a special education teacher herself. With us also, you can see, is Allison Yoshimoto Tauri, which is the district's Chief Academic Officer, and Maribel Luna, the Senior Director for Special Education. They've joined us, and they'll be around to answer questions when we get to the question and answer session. I also want to say that there are local district special education administrators in our audience tonight from local districts Central and East, and they'll be listening and helping to answer your questions going forward. And so now let's hear from the experts. Let's start with you, Tony Aguilar. Take it away.
So good evening, and thank you, Board Member Goldberg. Tony Aguilar, Chief of Special Education, Equity and Access, so overseeing special education, student health and human services, and federal and state education programs. And first and foremost, I just want to once again just reiterate the thank yous to Board Member Goldberg. Having an opportunity to engage with our communities is very important, especially at this time. Since we last spoke, I've had an opportunity to attend other local districts and other board districts, town halls, as well as parent workshops and special education parent meetings. So I thank you for participating today because yes, any questions that do surface are things that are informative and help provide feedback to our division. So I want to thank you for that. Also, on a quick highlight, since we last spoke, conversations and questions circled around virtual IEPs and whether or not we were going to be able to conduct them. I will say that as of right now, we've already have started to hold virtual IEPs and we're in full swing and have trained staff. Have also reached out for parents to get them to have them trained as well. And also the ongoing efforts as we're working on refining that process to make it easier for our parents to engage in this new virtual IEP process. Again, we're fully engaged in distance learning to the best extent possible, making sure that our students, our commitments to our students can still be honored. So we're working diligently with our partners, our administrators, and our teachers to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. I will say, there are several concerns that are out there, and I recognize that. I want to start off by saying if there are any major issues that have been going on, you absolutely have your first point of contact of reaching out to your local administrator, your principal, your school site administrator, or your local district. But if all else, you do have our hotline, which I encourage you also to use. Again, I know that anxieties or frustrations may occur at this time, and I want to make sure that our families have an opportunity to share that with us. So I just want to take the time to kind of reiterate that phone number, and I'll probably reiterate it again as the town hall proceeds, but it's area code 213-241-6701. Once again, area code 213-241-6701. And please, I want to make sure that if you haven't been heard yet, or if something's going on, to let us know. And also, we also want to make sure that we have your schools have the most current phone numbers for you as well. So I know that during this transition, many of us have changed numbers, but we want to make sure that for those parents that have not been able to connect with a teacher or service provider, can go ahead and contact us so we can make those connections and support you. So thank you once again, Board Member Goldberg, for this opportunity to be here today.
And thank you. And now we're going to hear from, hold it, I lost my place here. Oh yes, we're going to hear from Gloria Martinez, UTLA Elementary Vice President, and also a special education teacher herself. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Martinez.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much, Jackie, for organizing an event over such an important topic. As a special education teacher myself, I know the amounts of hours that it takes to advocate on behalf of our students, and how there are some mountains that seem insurmountable, but I think that when we connect with community, with parents, and involve our students, I think that there are definitely mountains that we can push. So I, first of all, want to thank all of our parents at home for being so patient during this time. I also want to start with a message of love to our students. Please know that your teachers miss you daily. I have a lot of teacher friends, and one of the greatest things that they, miss is the interaction of, with their students. So students, we miss you. We know that you miss coming to school and being with your friends, but we miss you. We miss watching you thrive in the classroom setting. And just know that everyone is struggling. But if you feel like you are struggling just a little bit more, always feel free to reach out to the educators at your school site, and of course your teacher. So thank you, parents, and thank you, students, for making this transition as seamless as possible. Although this is now week 7, and it just seems that every time we seem to get a hold of it, something changes. So again, thank you, Jackie, for having us here. We've been, as a teachers union, we've long been fighting for more rights and more contract language around special education for far too long. This was a topic that was avoided because it's very complex. And I think over the last couple of years, and definitely since our strike, we have made great strides in this area. And I'm, very happy to continue that work post this pandemic. But right now, we have a serious issue at hand that I think we, with our district partners, are working tirelessly to ensure that it's as seamless for our students, is as seamless for our parents. And so I really appreciate you opening this forum up. I appreciate you having this space for all of us to come together and to really have a dialogue around such a unique population of students, because we're often overlooked. So anytime there's an opportunity for us to highlight our students, I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay, so now it's time for some questions. Did I unmute? Oop, the first one goes to Mr. Aguilar because it's one you sort of mentioned. So if IEPs are held by Zoom, the questioner wants to know, how should we obtain the requested signatures?
So great question. Thank you. So definitely the training that we include both for staff and for parents has that, kind of walks through that feature of getting this, capturing the signature. Also, the administrator that's, or the designee of the IEP would also support and facilitate that process. But it really is kind of handing over of the controls to the parents to be able to capture that signature electronically, and then we're able to capture it for agreement of an IEP.
What if they can't do it electronically?
If we can, we would definitely be able to finalize the IEP and get a printed out copy for them to be able to get a signature from our families to be able to get back as well, that we
The
can
old way,
provide.
snail mail. The old way,
The
snail
old,
mail.
the old ways, absolutely.
All right. With very few guidelines, this next questioner asks, how can special education teachers legally complete IEPs virtually?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, so they participate and they provide feedback of students' goals. So they're during an IEP, just like you would in on any given year in a physical setting, a teacher participates in an IEP, provides their reports on the academic progress or goal attainment for that student. And actually, it's not uncommon for us to hold IEPs in more of a virtual world per se. We have held IEPs in this fashion when we used to do telephone or telephone conferencing, which has been something that we've utilized. So it's just a matter of the participant is able to share, provide input and support, and then as an IEP team member, as a team, be able to determine the best needs for the student and the best needs and placement for the student.
Okay, the next question I have is, if I disagree with an evaluation done by the district, how soon would the district get back to me after schools reopen?
If the disagreement is, it's going to depend on if the disagreement was prior to an IEP that took place prior to school closing. We should have already had documentation of that, and the response would have been provided. If it happens during the virtual IEP process, if there was an evaluation, then it would proceed in that kind of virtual forum. We try to get everything. We try to get everything to our parents as quickly as possible. I will say that if an evaluation that has been completed, let me backtrack. Evaluations and assessments that have been completed before March 13th are the ones that we're able to kind of speak about. We don't have an opportunity to complete assessments because of the stay-at-home orders that we have and because of the safety and the priority of our students and staff in a physical one-on-one environment. So if an assessment has been completed and a parent has a disagreement, then we would absolutely get back to them within that time frame.
Okay, Gloria, the next one's for you. What are UTLA's recommendations for virtual IEPs and the 240 minutes?
Well, this was something that comes up a lot with our members, and we want our members to encompass all of their work within the 240 minutes. We have to be flexible with our time. We have to ensure that it does not compromise student social distance learning, but at the same time, we want to be cognizant that at some point you do have to incorporate your IEP writing time and your Welligent documentation during the 240 minutes that we bargained for.
Thank you. Will there be summer school for special education students? And if so, what kind?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and hand off to Dr. Luna regarding our extended school year.
So we will have extended school year. The dates are going to be June 29th to July 24th. And right now, since we still have the stay-at-home orders in place, we're going to be doing it virtually. We're still working out the details of that, but we're going to do our best to provide supports to our students. We have about 2,400 students so far enrolled, and we're looking, if parents, if it's noted in the IEP that our students qualify for ESY or that they should be attending ESY, please be sure that you register. There are different ways to go ahead and register. You can do it on the parent portal, or you can fax the letter over to the number that's on the letter, or you can also send an email. If you have any questions regarding it, we're going to say this number over and over again. It's the same 213-241-6701 number that you can call if you have any questions regarding ESY. But again, these are uncharted territories, and we're going to do our best to service our students and continue on with the extended school year.
And just to add on a little bit to that.
For everyone who doesn't speak alphabetese, what is ESY again?
So extended school year.
Thank you.
And let me clarify a little bit. So extended school year is students that have IEPs that are students with disabilities are found eligible, and it's listed in their IEP. So we are having extended school years for those students that were eligible for ESY.
Okay, the next question I have is, how can we improve communication between teachers and parents? This person added at the end, I don't want any more recorded calls.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that one of the things that what we've been hearing from our educators is, like Tony mentioned earlier, is updated contact information. So a lot of our teachers are sending links via text so that they can add on to the virtual platforms that they are using. So I think having your updated information is critical and the first initial step. I do know that once a teacher attempts and without success to reach a student, that they do contact the administrator to take, more initiative, or I guess not more initiative, but find other means to reach the family. But having your updated contact information is key.
The next one says, my son is not receiving RSP services. Are RSP minutes being provided throughout the district? How are they being delivered?
So, Jackie, we ask that our RSP teachers provide services to the extent feasible and make contact with their students and provide them in as close to the same manner as they have during the school year. So they work in collaboration with our general education teachers, and some have been on Zoom calls with the teachers. Some contact the students separately and provide some work for them in small groups. And we have some that have also do consultation with the parents. So yes, they should be supporting our students. And if the RSP teacher of your child has for some reason not contacted them, or you feel the support is not sufficient, we urge you to contact the school site administrator first, start there. And if there is no response, then you can again call that same number, the 213-241-6701, and we'll be happy to help out with that.
Yeah, from the way the question is written, I think they did not get any RSP services.
Right.
Go ahead, Ms. Martinez.
Yeah, so just to add to what Maribel has just finished saying, that there are different ways in which our RST teachers are collaborating, right? Where they were maybe doing a push-in model, they're now collaborating with a general ed teacher. Some RST teachers are still holding small groups, but one of the issues that we face is the amount of screen time that a child has as well, because this is in addition to their general ed setting, right? So I think that there are ways for us to ensure that students aren't in front of the screen for hours on end. And that could look like with collaboration. I know of teachers that are getting very creative. Students are sending screenshots of math problems, and then they're working them out together. So there's ways to provide support in addition to, the typical small group setting that we might hold via Zoom, or the collaboration with their general ed teachers as well.
This person says, and it looks like it's from a teacher, how are we supposed to provide feedback to goals when the student does not participate in distant learning? All my data is in my classroom, but for sure it's outdated since the school closures. I guess it sounds like they don't have a student who's participating, so what do they do next? How do they provide feedback to their goals?
I do know that the latest guidance from the district is to log in Welligent the attempts that an educator has made to contact a student. That's very important. And as I mentioned earlier, notifying your administrator. We have wonderful PSA counselors who are checking in on our students. The well-being is important, right? And I think it's also, again, making sure we have your updated contact information, because without that, there is no initial contact. But I think it's important for educators to continue using that Welligent logging system and noting the attempts, each attempt that they try when a child hasn't been reached. I don't know.
Is there training for teachers on how to use Welligent?
Yes, Welligent is a software system that we've been using now for some time in special education. So we've been able to provide training, especially in the notes section, which is not uncommon for our teachers to use to track any kind of progress towards goal attainment. So It's something that's been around since the days of when I was a resource teacher. Yeah.
So if I'm a teacher though, and I don't feel like I can do it very well, where can I go to get help?
Oh, definitely. You can reach out to your school site administrator or reach out to me at the division, and we can support to offer, it's like almost like an IT call and offer technical support.
Okay, because anecdotally, I have heard from a few folks that say,
Right.
well, I used it sort of, but I'm uncomfortable. So, okay, good. There's a good place to go. How can I find out if my child is receiving all the instructional minutes required in their IEP?
So again, right now, to the best extent possible, we are offering services to our students and honoring those commitments. And so far as the challenges of being at the minute per minute count as it was at the physical school setting is the biggest challenge that we're encountering. And that's why we're following the guidance of CDE and the U.S. Department of Education when it comes to the best extent possible to ensure that we have learning opportunities for our students as we can in their IEPs, or as we did in their IEPs.
But I think what they want to know is how can they find out if their child is getting the required minutes or how many minutes they're getting? How do they find that out?
At that point, it's really a family member or parent would know, but they would know of how many service interactions or the schedules that's being provided to the student. So for example, a student may be, let's take the scenario that Dr. Luna had shared earlier, where you have a small group session going on. The parent would be aware of that, if it's a 30-minute session going on or what have you.
Okay.
Jackie,
Oh, we have more than 400 people on this. I just thought I should tell you that. Wow, that's great.
Jackie, can I just add to
Oh,
that?
yes, of course, by all means.
You know, I mean, no one could prepare for the environment that we are, not only our students learning, but that we are teaching in. So right now, the minute per minute is not feasible because so much of that has to be done interacting one-on-one in an actual physical situation, right? A lot of our DIS services are provided that way. But I think that we have, you know, our educators are committed to ensuring that we have services that are still being provided, as Tony says, to the extent possible. I know personally a lot of my friends who are service providers were just anguished because they couldn't figure out what are we going to do now, right? And we've been waiting for this guidance from the federal government. We've been following the CDE, but it's going to have to rely on creativity. It's going to have to rely on a lot of collaboration to ensure that our schedules align so that the child is able to receive as many of our services and as many minutes as possible. But again, to the extent feasible, because a lot of those services are best done one-on-one in a setting that is not the current setting we're in right now.
I know. Here's a question about the federal government's role. This person wants to know how the Secretary of Education, Betsy Voss's decision to not allow waivers, how's that going to play out in terms of special ed during the pandemic?
Well, I think one of the things that I will say is LA Unified from day one has been committed to ensure that we have engagement learning opportunities for all students, including our students with disabilities. And so what we heard from Secretary DeVos was that there weren't going to be waivers and they want learning to continue. And so for us in the district, this is something that we've already have done. And if anything, we're making it more robust as we're going along through this process to the best extent possible. Mm-hmm. To the fact that we have the opportunity to have people trained in the virtual environment, getting all devices to students, getting connectivity, there is definitely an opportunity for us to have meaningful interactions with our students.
However, I'm going to add a little comment here. I write to people in the government. I write to my congressperson, I write to my 2 US senators, and I'm going to, on my blog, JackieLAUSD.com, post how you can do the same, because we need you as parents and family members of special education students to tell the federal government that they should be honoring their commitment to fully fund special education, and they should honor their commitment to make waivers of rules that are necessary during a pandemic. But more on that as I get into my blogs with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just add to that, that one of the issues that has always faced, special ed services is the lack of funding. It's not funded nearly enough. It certainly isn't at 100%. It certainly isn't at 50%. It varies between 13 and 14%.
Mhm.
Which means that the district is always having to take out of the general ed fund in order to make up for services, right? To pay for these. What we saw in 2009 during the Great Recession under ARA was a one-time funding that got IDEA up to 33%.
Wow.
There's 494 people on right now. We've seen the news and we are, reading the headlines how this is twice as bad and probably has the opportunity to get even worse than 2008. So a one-time stimulus funding for 1 year at 33% isn't going to cut it. So I love your plan of calling our Congress members. I think that it's going to be, the voters that are going to have to insist on ensuring that there's funding for the services that our students are going to need once school reopens. And it seems that that's falling on deaf ears. But I also know that this issue is bipartisan. This is an issue that hits home across the country. So if we all pick up our phones, I think that all our voices will be heard. So I encourage, and I thank you for that blog, and we'll find a way to share that because that will be very important. I think we have parents that are just natural advocates that I think know exactly what to say and know exactly what it means to have to fight for what you deserve.
And we're going to help you join that fight if you don't already know how to do it. And if you do, just keep doing it. So here's an interesting one. Some of our special needs students are not able to learn remotely. What's the plan for making sure they get services?
So that's definitely, all students it's individualized attention that they're receiving. And so this is where it's very important for our service providers to connect with them, much as to what was said earlier in the different ways that we're offering service interactions and engaged learning opportunities for our students. So there are students who realistically being behind a computer screen is not something they can do. And so it's up to us as the professionals and service providers to connect with families, to identify at this moment in time, what is the best need? Is it the packet need that I check in and circle back? Is it just that I walk somebody through in a phone conversation through a strategy? It could be an array of different options, but the point being is that it is all individualized, and we're making sure that our service providers and teachers are tuned into those needs.
And Jackie, I would just want to add that, again, initially, like with everybody, that learning curve, even for educators, had to happen. And I think that what I'm seeing now, I certainly am seeing it on social media, people putting up videos, and you've seen touching videos of staff just reaching out to their students and, providing that message of comfort, right? So I think that now that we have been in this for a bit, and I hate to say that this is our new normal because I never would want to accept this as our new normal, but I really feel that educators are hitting a stride where they're getting very creative with the resources that are out there. They're getting creative with the training that the district has provided, and are now being able to mesh those two together in creative ways, ensuring that we meet the needs of our students.
Really? Oh, here's an interesting one. What can a Spanish-speaking parent do if their child's special education teacher doesn't speak Spanish?
So I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Dr. Luna on this, as we have actually worked on this. We've had situations.
Okay. So the question is, if the parent doesn't speak Spanish and wants to communicate with the teacher, doesn't speak English, I'm sorry, and the teacher doesn't speak Spanish. So we still have our paraprofessionals supporting our classrooms and supporting our teachers, and we do have some bilingual paraprofessionals available. And so I would say that, make it be known to the teacher somehow, either through the student, if that's possible, let them know that they would like to have a conversation, and then the teacher can arrange to have the paraprofessional support them in that conversation. That's one way of doing so. If there's no way to communicate that need to the teacher, for some reason the student can't communicate that need, then we're going to ask again that you go through the school site, and the school site will facilitate that for you. But we will always look for a way to make communication happen between a parent and a teacher, because we know how important that is. And so please reach out. Please don't feel that the language barrier is going to keep you from participating in your students' education.
And if you can't reach them, you can call 213-241-6701. You got me memorizing it.
Thank you, Jackie.
How will the
Perfect.
district facilitate safe distancing for speech language pathologists and others who work like one-on-one with students?
So I'm assuming that the question is when the time comes when we are able to reconnect.
Yes, I guess so.
It's still a little, well, you know, the social distancing protocols are going to be a challenge, and we're going to be working through things to make sure that we've identified with the Department of Public Health that we've already, there are certain systems that are going to be in place. So it's a matter of what level are we going to be in? Are we going to be 25 in a room? Are we going to be 10 in a room? And at that point, we'll follow their lead on their recommendations, and that's how we'll move forward to provide services.
So this person says, I requested an IEP prior to schools shutting down, but it didn't happen. So how will such requests be handled now?
So if an IEP request was done before, I just want to, we do have to follow up there with the call-in number. That's probably very individualized. I don't know if the assessment plan was returned, signed, and ready to go, or where we are in the process. So I think in this event, I would go ahead and call and reach out to our customer hotline for special education, and we can identify where they are in the process and see how we can support.
I think they said that they thought they were going to have an IEP, but it didn't happen. So now how will it happen?
So if the assessments have been completed, so if there's a request for an assessment that's done, if the assessments have been completed prior to us ending in March 16th, then yeah, we will be able to schedule and have a virtual IEP. However, if the requests happen and there are certain assessments still pending, because of everything going on and the safer at home orders we have, we want to make sure that we honor the priority of the safety of students and staff. We'll have to continue that assessment when we return back to the site.
Okay.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
It's important for parents to understand that there is a battery of assessments that have to take place before we say a child is eligible for special education services. And so those assessments can be very lengthy at times, and because they really do go into like the level of the ability for every child to ensure that we're not over designating or under designating, right? So those assessments are critical. And unfortunately, because of the closure, right, and because of the stay-at-home orders, it might lengthen the time for you to get an initial IEP, but I think that it's important for us to remember how important it is that those assessments are honored and that those timelines are honored so that we ensure that we are assessing and identifying our students appropriately.
Thank you. If a 12th grade student doesn't have enough credits to graduate, can he or she stay in the same high school for another year?
I'll hand off to our Chief Academic Officer.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. The question is, can a student stay for a 5th year of high school?
Yes,
And yes, we do have options. Students can stay in high school for a 5th year. They could also complete courses during the summer to make up the courses that they need to and the credits that they need to. This summer, we will have expanded opportunities for credit recovery or recovering credits. And so please stay tuned. There were several questions in the chat about how to register for summer school. That information should be available in mid-May. So please stay tuned for how to register for all grades, but particularly for high school credit recovery as well.
So here's an interesting question. Someone wants to know if we can see somehow a mock virtual IEP demonstration from the district.
So
We can, go ahead, Dr. Luna.
there is IEP training. We've had several of the virtual IEP trainings. It's been very popular, I have to say. Since we started the virtual IEPs, we've had a lot of positive feedback. I think we're just over 800 virtual IEPs that we've had thus far, and the feedback has been very positive. But there are several IEP trainings, and within that IEP training, they do have some mock experiences that you can see there. And then, Mr. Aguilar, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, and then definitely in parent workshops, and specifically when it comes to the virtual IEP training. So I'm gonna actually, I've noted that as feedback as well, like maybe just kind of walking through almost like a screencast of how, like a walkthrough of what that would be in kind of a fast forward process. I think that's a great idea. So noting that, thank you.
I think people maybe who haven't gone through an IEP process would kind of like to see what it looks like before they actually enter into one. I know when I did that with my son, I certainly would have liked to have known it more about it before I started it. So I understand that concern.
We'll work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so my next question is, how will parents receive training on distance learning and understanding the curriculum that their child is experiencing?
So one of the things I want to tip my hat and I want to honor is the leadership at our local districts. So our local district superintendents have done a really phenomenal job in hosting initial larger district town halls, but then they're also breaking it down by communities. And so each of those communities are able to also do parent trainings and parent workshops to help parents get through this process. And it could be very rudimentary, not even curriculum based. It could be just the basics of scheduling during distance learning, right? It could be also talking about behaviors and how to monitor and manage behaviors during distance learning. But then it also gets a little bit more involved where we're able to offer some curriculum approach. So I definitely want to commend the work that's being done at our local districts that have trickled down to the school sites.
So if a parent wants some help, they should call their local district office and see if they can get in one of those trainings?
Absolutely, and every single local district also has a parent engagement administrator that is basically in tune to support. But by all means, if I don't want to say if they're unable to get a hold of somebody, they can call us and we'll definitely flag it as well. And I'll hand off to Gloria as well, who I think wanted to add.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I just wanted to add that I know, my mother didn't speak English. My parents are immigrants. And I think there was always this a fear or just an embarrassment to ask for help. I just want to encourage parents to reach out to your teachers as well. I know that some of our educators are holding like Friday workshops where, they encourage parents and their child to sit in a meeting, and they go over like curriculum that's going to happen for the following week, just so that they can kind of front load it for parents, which I think is brilliant. And I think really lessens that filter, right? But I just want to encourage parents, again, your teachers want to help. They want this to go as smoothly as possible. A lot of our educators, 71% of our educators are women. Many of them are home with their own children and school teaching, at home teaching, excuse me, as well as teaching your children. But please always feel free that you can reach out to your son or daughter's teacher asking for help. And I think that, I've seen wonderful creative ways in which we're trying to increase engagement with our parents. So thank you, educators, as well, for engaging, going above and beyond.
Very good, very good. Okay, this is from a special education teacher. This person says, I'm posting and accommodating work for my students, but at the TK and K level, it's reliant on the parents to access the materials. Some parents are ignoring the calls and emails I'm making and even asking me to stop calling. What's the conversation regarding these students? What do I do next?
So first and foremost, again, want to commend the work of our teacher. They're definitely being tuned in and trying to make the connection and going above and beyond. And, when kids aren't connecting, noticing that lack of engagement and reaching out and trying to make contact. At this point in time, and we have heard, it can be very challenging. As Gloria mentioned, many of us are working parents that have school-age children, myself included, and our chief academic officer, senior director as well. And so there are times when the anxieties and frustrations are high, and I can definitely attest to wanting to kind of maybe take a back pedal or a back seat to engaging. Our teachers can definitely continue to track those attempts as we've asked them to do, but to not stop and to reach out to our PSA counselors to continue to engage our parent, because at the very minimum, we want to make sure that we're supporting our students. And so my fear is we would have a student who would have gone through this whole time without having any learning opportunity that we were aware of. Not to say they weren't engaging in other material at home, but it's better for our educators to be in tune with what's going on.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
I can just add to that really quickly. I think that you're right. I think we need to keep track, let your administrator know, our wonderful PSAs who are also helping and making sure that we reach as many students as possible during this time. So that is very critical, and please don't give up. We wouldn't give up on our students in the classroom. We should not give up on our students during the closure.
Very good, very good. Here's a parent who says, my student is working but not getting much out of this time. Can I ask for that student to be held back into the same grade next year?
I can answer that question. So when we hold a student back, we call that retention. We certainly are not recommending wholesale retention, meaning for all of our students to be retained. That wouldn't be feasible, nor would it be good for them, socially. And so I would encourage you to reach out to your child's teacher, reach out to your child's administrator to have a conversation about whether that is an option for you or your child to be retained, if that would benefit them. Many times retention has short-term benefits, but not necessarily long-term benefits. And there are also many social emotional factors involved. So if it wasn't brought up prior to school closures alone are not enough of a reason to retain, but I would definitely encourage you to reach out, because it would be a decision similar to an IEP team. There would be a meeting to convene a group of teachers and administrators and yourself to make that decision. Thank you.
Will therapist time be made up? Will special education students get instruction on Zoom?
Definitely, our therapists and our related services providers have been already engaging in learning opportunities for our students. So and Dr. Luna has been leading that charge, so I'll hand off to her.
So they've been following up with, again, in the variety of ways, with consults, with some Zoom videos, and with also, we've encouraged them to do some pre-recorded videos, because in that way they can record their lessons and then share with their colleagues, and then we have more videos from which to reach for and from which to provide to our students. So they should continue that, and we do have them reaching out to them. And tell me again the question, are they receiving therapy?
Yes. They're not getting as many minutes as they would have if they've been in school. Will the time be made up?
So we're trying, again, we're going to go back to the extent feasible. We're really trying to provide as much support as possible. And again, back to the pre-recorded, and that's one way in which we do it, by being able to spread ourselves thinner and have various people share the recordings. And then every case will be looked at when we turn back to school in terms of compensatory time. It'll be looked at individually. This is not, us not being able to provide the services is not something that we are doing intentionally, obviously. It's something due to the crisis. And so we are not looking at it as though compensatory time is owed to everyone. It will be on a case-by-case basis, and it's just dependent on the situation.
And Jackie, I like to just make another pitch for, the people on this call to reach out to their legislators, because making up services means that additional funding is necessary. And the inadequate funding of IDEA is what's causing a lot of issues around providing services for our students to begin with. So compensatory time, needs to come with additional funding. And I worry that that's not a priority right now. But I think it's up to us, those of us on the call and allies of ours, to ensure that it doesn't just get overlooked, but that we make it a priority so that our students do get to be made whole again.
Next question is, how long will it be before my child receives more instructional material at home? I bet that's an Allison.
So I'm not sure what grade your child is in, but the majority of our high school students should have devices now and be able to, and connectivity and be able to connect that way. If you do not have a device and your child's in middle school or high school, you can call our general hotline number. This is a different number. It's area code 213-443-1300, 443-1300. And that number, you can put an order in for a device or connectivity to the internet. And that is the way that our students should be getting instructional materials. If your child's in elementary school, this week and possibly next week, they should be receiving a workbook. And this workbook is,
I think that's what they're talking about.
has ELA, English language arts, math and science, and just activities for them to do that are family friendly, that will review standards from this grade and also get them ready for the next grade level. So those are arriving. I got messages today from parents letting us know that their kids were excited, their books are arriving. And if you haven't, it'll be coming in the next week.
I love that kids are excited about receiving work.
Yeah.
All right, so what can I do to motivate my third grade son in special education? He is definitely not interested in distance learning. I've tried a lot of things, but do you have any suggestions that might help me?
Well, definitely connecting with the child's teacher who knows already how to engage a student in the classroom would be a first step. So if that attempt has been made, that individualized attention and matter would be best handled by the teacher. However, you know, I will say making sure, I'm thinking of the strategies I would implement as a resource teacher. You know, a lot of the students that I provided services to, they needed frequent breaks. They needed immediate, quick solutions to task and being given that opportunity. So identifying some quick successors, right, that builds on that so that we can continue to keep them engaged. And the fact that we have a variety of different methods of which you can do, we can have any kind of learning opportunity, meaning we still have educational broadcasting going on PBS, right? And so it could be that they want to engage in learning in that fashion. It could be that they do want to do a packet. And so then it would be a matter of shortening the task a bit and maybe putting time parameters on it. If you have a sand timer, great, or any timer would really work. And many of us that do baking probably have that already handy. Things that can give kids a quick success to mark that they're making progress. Sometimes it really helps in the engagement process and building on that.
And
Go ahead,
Go
Dora.
ahead.
Okay, thank you. So just to echo what Tony said, and Maribel, I apologize for jumping in, but I do think it's important for again, teachers and parents to communicate. There's nothing to be embarrassed about needing additional supports during this time. Our educators were reaching out to us. I know they've reached out to many of the people that you see on your screen for support. This is all new. And I think, you know, if it's difficult for us, I know I'm having challenges as an adult. If it's difficult for us, I could only imagine what it would be like for my second and third graders, which is, you know, one of the last grades that I taught before heading into this position. I think we're realizing more than ever that school is a refuge for many of our students. It's where they go and their personalities shine. It's where they go and they have their friends. They, you know, they're able to ask questions that maybe they didn't feel comfortable asking at home because they have their peers around them at school, right? So I think just asking maybe your child, what is it that is keeping you from being drawn? Are you, embarrassed because I know, this is me, like when I don't work out for a few days, I'm like, oh, well, there it goes, right? If a child feels like for now 6-7 weeks, or what might seem, years for a child, if they feel like they haven't been engaged, maybe they're a little embarrassed to hop on now. Maybe they're, a little ashamed that they've missed this much. They're afraid of maybe feeling insecure about their learning, during this time. That's okay. Because, as Tony mentioned, there are ways that we can scaffold. There are ways that we can reintroduce that engagement. But the key to this would be ensuring that you talk to your child just a bit and try to figure out what is really going on there, and then notifying the teacher. My child is a little embarrassed because it's been so long, right? My child is a little embarrassed because they haven't been keeping up with their reading, and now children know when they're struggling with something academically. Nobody wants to highlight that. So we want to make sure that we reintroduce them at a pace that makes sense for the child as well.
And the easiest idea for any parent is to take a piece of paper and make a little checkbox for your student, and you could use stars or happy faces, and the child gets a goal. They get something that they want when they finish that chart. And so you can make a goal, and every time they do 2 minutes or 3 minutes of something you'd like them to do, they get another happy face. And it's something that usually works well.
And the last thing to note on that is that we do have a parent website on our special education website. There's the parent resources, and we have links and various resources that parents can access there, and that can help them re-engage their students. We have them for the related services, so for adapted PE, for psych services, for our speech services. We also have them for our pre-K students. So really encourage parents to go onto the special education website and access the parent COVID resources that we have on there. We've had a lot of hits, I think over 30,000, and I think it's a great site, and you'll find some great resources there. And be patient with yourself. Be patient. I'm just going to echo what everyone else is saying. Be patient with your child, but also be patient with yourself, and know that it's difficult for everyone. And if you can't have your child sit for the 40 minutes or however long, it's okay. We can try something different tomorrow. We're all just doing the best we can.
Jackie, can I just add, and I know we're having more of a discussion with this one, so thank you for that question. First and foremost, I think I want to tip my hat to our Chief Academic Officer, who showed off her elementary teacher skills right now by quickly making a chart for us. But I do want to say, and Gloria, thank you, because you reminded me of something else, and it's something that of a division of which I also supervise, which is Student Health and Human Services. With the array of anxiety and stress that has been going on with our students, our families, and communities, I want to also make sure that our families, communities, staff, and students know that we do have a mental health hotline, and to not be embarrassed. These are stressful times, and it's this kind of reality that we live in. And so I want to just share that number real quick, and that number is 213-241-3840. And again, it's 213-241-3840. It is for students, it is for staff, it is for community members, parents. Again, we recognize that this is a very unique and challenging times. And right now, without that kind of social network that we would have when we would see each other at our school site and our work sites, there is a gap, and we want to make sure that we're tuned in with our families and communities together while we get through this.
Well, I just can't emphasize enough rewards. That's because we have special education kids all through my family, and it was very important to have meaningful rewards when they completed meaningful tasks. If you give a reward when they didn't do it, that kind of destroys the system. But if you can hold out and give a reward when there's a meaningful amount of work done or a meaningful goal achieved, boy, good rewards really motivate kids, and they motivate adults too. What are we just talking about, kids?
Reward yourself also.
There you go. Have teachers and therapists been told they are not allowed to be in one-on-one Zoom sessions with students? And if so, why? It seems inefficient to have too many more people on.
Basically, on this one, we want to make sure we're protecting the rights of, or protecting our students and our staff as well. And it's not uncommon during the regular school year to discourage that and make sure that we have group settings. So we're trying to encourage our teachers to have those group sessions with their students to make sure in groups of 2 or more, so that we can protect both students and staff at this time.
How can a therapist be with 2 students?
They're not necessarily with two students. We ask that the parents be there, be present, or an adult be present also
Okay.
And I think
in
there's
those cases.
the use of the video, right, Maribel, where you can do like guiding a child through a service that they might need. But I just want to reiterate what Tony said. I know that these are some trying times, but it's important for us to make sure that the code of conduct is followed and that both parties are equally protected, and that includes our members as educators, but also our students.
Is there a special education fund or any fund that could help parents get things like graph paper, safety scissors, educational books? We don't have very much in our home, but we'd like to get some. How do we do that?
I would definitely encourage on a case-by-case to call. I'm going to give you that same number if they need support with that, because we'd be looking to provide support for that. And let us know if you don't have the resources that you need to support your child with their education. We'd like to know and see what we can do about that. And should I give the number again? Do I dare?
Of course.
213-241-6701.
And I just want to kind of, and I'm going to give a little bit handoff to Allison on this one too, because this isn't unique to special ed. It's really all of our students. So if we have families out there that are struggling with supplies that they may need, to please kind of reach out. Again, with the special ed student, if they call that number, that's fine. Even if they call the other number that Allison had shared, the 213-443. 4,300. I think I got that right, Allison. But I'll hand off to you, Allison. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. But the key to the answer is there's help for you.
There is.
So call somebody, ask for help. It's not an embarrassing thing. We all need help. Get it, and obviously you want to help your kids. So that's.
And wherever you're most comfortable, you can call the number or start at the school site. Start with the teacher. Start with the principal. Call the number wherever the parent is most comfortable.
So a teacher said, I applied to teach in ESY. When will I find out? And another one said, can I still apply for ESY teaching?
So the application for ESY, I believe, is open until May 5th. I want to say offhand. And so you should be able to still access the application and apply. And in the next few weeks, we will be notifying teachers if they will be teaching. We're still getting through the details of extended school year of ESY, but in the next few weeks, we will be notifying them.
How about paraprofessionals? Will they be used in ESY?
They will. We are still working out details as to how, just like we had to do for the regular school year, but we will have some paraprofessionals also working during ESY.
As long as we're on ESY, let me ask another question. I believe my child has been regressing due to the current situation. Can we request an IEP meeting? Because right now ESY is not on their IEP, but I think my child could do well with it because she seems to be moving backwards as we go through this difficult time.
At this moment in time, I would definitely reach out to the teacher to have that conversation. But the regression discussion is an IEP team decision to whether or not have an ESY as an eligibility. And that since there are so many factors there that would be missing, that in assessments, it would be very challenging in a virtual environment for an IEP team to, I think, make a well-informed decision on what eligibility may be triggered or would lead to that regression.
So probably not.
Right, because there are some challenges. That IEP team, for whatever, the IEP team had a decision during that meeting, the initial meeting that took place, in which the student was not found eligible for ESY. So there was an array of good information there. And so right now, it's best to have that conversation if they're sensing any type of regression with their child's service provider and or teacher. But it would be very challenging to have everyone, the IEP team, come to the table in a virtual environment to make an informed decision on whether the eligibility for ESY continue or is something that we're going to be triggering.
I would want to add that we are expanding summer school for For all students. So if core curriculum is an option for your child, then that's certainly an option if they're not eligible for ESY or if ESY is not
okay.
written into their IEP. So again, that will be announced in the next 2 weeks.
And that would maybe include students who are being mainstreamed in classes that are regular gen ed classes?
Sure, sure.
Okay, all
Or
right. Well,
gen
there's
ed
another
setting.
alternative there too. Can we provide face shields for certain therapists? My son has a 504. Will that be honored?
Again, when it comes to any type of reentry plan or any type of personal protection equipment that will be needed, we're going to continue to follow the guidance of CDC and the Department of Public Health. So that would be something that we'll be able to identify and make a decision at that time. Insofar as the Section 504, I'll hand off a little bit to Allison on this, but Section 504 is is not a special education function. It is a general education function. So it is something, the accommodations of which the general ed teacher is supporting as well. So Allison, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I would again just ask that you reach out to your school, given the nature of the 504. I think it would be a personal decision as to how that looks in a remote setting currently. And so without knowing the details, it's difficult to respond generally, but please do reach out to your school and so that can be determined. But certainly we would want to do our best to honor that and to make sure may need to be adjusted in a remote learning environment depending on what that says, but it is a legal document, so we would do our best.
How do parents request records, educational records during the shutdown?
If it's a student with disability, they definitely can call that number to make a request. Obviously, in the current time, many of our employees are working remotely, so we do have some challenges into getting records. So at this moment in time, though, we can log that in, so they can definitely call in our 213-241-6701 number.
What supports and services are available to parents that are struggling with their children's increased behavioral difficulties?
I'm sorry, so if their increased...
Kids' disability is around how they behave.
Right.
This parent says, how do I get help? I'm not doing very well with this. Who can help me?
Definitely, at that point, reaching out to the child's teacher is the first stop, because the child's teacher has, these are the strategies of which they can share about the student that they can use at home. A lot of it goes back to, much like you mentioned in the reward system, or what we call often the token economy, and trying to improve the behavior. But then we also, I encourage you to seek those strategies. And again, going back to something Dr. Luna had referenced as well, we do have our parent resources pages that they can actually look for and identify any strategies that they could utilize.
What can I do? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add, yes, that I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier, yes to everything that Tony just mentioned, but one of the things you mentioned earlier is having patience with yourself. I'm gonna lay out just a big secret here that teachers, we've been keeping to ourselves. Sometimes what we try doesn't always work, and what works today doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work tomorrow. So be patient with your child and be patient with yourself in experimenting to see what worked, because just because it worked today and for this week doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work tomorrow. I think that what we also have as educators is a huge bag of tricks that we can refer to, and that's how we're able to manage our classroom. So I think reaching out and having that conversation, again, being vulnerable during this time is key for us to really get through it together. If your child has a behavior support plan, finding ways to implement some aspect of that. You won't be able to replicate a classroom at home, right, for many reasons, but you can certainly take and accommodate to ensure that your child is feeling supported during this time.
And I found personally that if we had a schedule of things we do, At 8 o'clock, we brush our teeth. At 8:30, we have breakfast. At 9 o'clock, we do some reading. At 10 o'clock, we play some video games or take out a board game or listen to music or whatever. Because I think structure for a lot of children is very helpful. It's reassuring that there is a regulation to life. It isn't just all gone to pot. That's something for me was very, very helpful, was trying to set up that. All right, so here's the next question. What do we do if a teacher is not connecting with my student virtually? Are they trained in district learning? Does the district know if teachers are connecting with students virtually or not?
So right now, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Luna.
Sorry about that. So as we mentioned before, there are different ways whereby the teachers may communicate with their students and may provide the services. They can do it, via packets, via consultation over the telephone, via live video, via pre-recorded video, etc. The district did provide some training to teachers, and so there was a variety of training that was provided and that was completed, and they're in the process, and Allison can speak to more to that, but they are in the process of providing more training to teachers. But if you feel that your student isn't being serviced adequately, definitely reach out. Again, start with the teacher. That, if that doesn't work, go to the site administrator, and if that doesn't work, again, you can always reach out and call our number, and we'd be happy to help. But there are different ways by which teachers are communicating with students. Not all of them are doing live video at this point.
Well, we still have 130 more questions to go through, but we're not going to get them all done. So let me reassure you, particularly if you were at our first town hall meeting a couple of weeks ago, we will take down every single question that we don't get to ask in person now. And we will use that information to get answers from our panelists or anyone else we need to ask. And after we do that, we're going to begin posting on my blog, which is JackieLAUSD.com, and you can find your answers if we don't get to it. We got time for maybe one or two more, and then we're going to wrap up. What are we doing for dyslexic students? I haven't seen enough trained LAUSD staff. I know this is a Scott Schmerlson issue too. He's really hot on this one, but anybody want to take that?
Sure, I can share that we have over the last 3 years worked with our dyslexia work group, some who are on the call today. It's a coordination between Division of Special Education and Division of Instruction, and we are working to provide training to our teachers in a collaborative effort. The goal is to have one highly trained person at every school, and then to increase the capacity of all of our general education teachers, enabling them to teach the foundational early reading skills to our students. All teachers were trained in an awareness module last year, so we intend to go deeper this year, both with professional development, additional curriculum, and additional support.
I don't want to do an IEP on Zoom. Can I wait till next year?
Similar to a regular school year, where a parent has to consent into doing an IEP, so they would just have to reply to the form that is being sent out that's requesting the IEP meeting to note that, and we can work on honoring that request.
Okay. I'm a special education teacher of moderate to severe disabilities. Will we be getting a workbook for our students? I can't seem to get an answer from anyone.
Some of our students that are moderate to severe and are in the core curriculum in elementary will be receiving those, but specifically if it's a different grade level, if they can even reach out to the Division of Special Education to get that support, or the local district special ed administrator as well.
My child is transitioning from middle to high school. He's in a special day class. How's that going to work?
So that's definitely, transition IEPs are held, as you know, when we go from 5th grade to 6th grade, 8th grade to 9th grade. And so definitely making sure that we're holding those virtual IEPs so that we can identify the location of services and the placement for students for the upcoming year. So that's the intent of why we're trying to ensure that we have the option of virtual IEPs, so that we can identify this for the student in that IEP.
Okay, I think the last question I'm going to give you is that Governor Newsom seems to think we're all going back to school in July. Is that true?
So I know he did make that announcement. We as a district are taking our direction from the County Department of Public Health, and Tony works with them often, and as at some point daily calls with the county. And so we at 5 a.m. in the morning. So we right now are actually just planning for all scenarios. We are planning for online summer school, and we are planning for any scenario in the fall, just to be ready. So if we're ready to go back physically, we will. If the health situation changes, then we'll also be ready for that.
And then just to add to that, there wasn't a commitment to a timeline, and I think it's important for us to use the metrics that the governor set out a few weeks back before we try to rush any imaginary timeline. Although we understand the need to get back into the swing of things per se, we don't want to rush and put our students' health and safety in danger just because we're trying to make some artificial timeline. So I think that it was something mentioned, but there wasn't necessarily a commitment to a hard start in July. Excuse me. But I think it's something for us to watch and to leave it honestly to the scientists who know and understand the waves in which this might come back. So I think it's important for us to have a plan of action for us just in case it does happen. But I also think it's important for us to have metrics to measure to ensure that we're not rushing anything.
Right, and to add, just kind of to add that, to close in on that, one thing I will say, and I know I echo it with all the educators that are here with me right now, is we all want to go back, and so that's a reality that every one of us want to be back in that schoolhouse setting. So that goes without saying, but we're going to make sure that we do it, as Gloria mentioned, in the safest way possible, because the top priority is the safety of our students and staff, and so we want to make sure that we're being cognizant of that. But as far as the desires, yes, yes, and yes. We're ready to go back. We want to go back.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I said we really do miss our students.
I know. And they miss you, believe me. They miss you. Okay, so, and I think our families are beginning to understand that teaching is a pretty difficult thing to do, even if you just have 2 to 5 people that you have to do it with, or 6 or 2 or 1. But it is a tough one, and I thank you. Let me just close by saying thank you. I want to thank all of our experts. I want to thank our sign language interpreters and our Spanish language interpreters. But most of all, I want to thank all of you who decided to join us tonight. By doing that, what you've done is to tell us what the issues are that you need us to be addressing. And that's a critical part of making sure that we are solving problems. We did not go out of school having everything ready to go. We didn't even know we were going until a couple of days before we went, which meant that we are learning by doing, which of course a lot of us think is the best way to learn anything anyway. But we're learning by doing, and that means, and I have to say to you, thank you for your patience out there, because I know kids are not getting everything they need. I know kids are not getting everything they deserve. But I do know that there are thousands of adults at all levels, from people who are cleaning classrooms every week now to make sure they're ready to go if we go back, to people handing out on lines food and so forth, to people calling their kids and writing to them, to administrators holding workshops. Everybody in this district, and I'm so proud of you, are really putting in the time to try to make this work, even though we all know we aren't, even though we haven't gotten there yet. But we hope that before we have enough time to figure out how to do this all online, we get to go back to school, don't we? If not, we're going to keep learning. And as we learn, we're going to keep changing. But the most important things you can do, love your children, love your families, help them understand that this is not something anybody did to them, but something that we all together will get through. I thank all of you for joining us. If your question didn't get asked, I'm sorry. I have 152 more to go, but I promise you, my staff and the people that were the experts tonight will all get together and we will answer every last one of them. We'll put it up in a blog on JackieLAUSD.com and it'll be available sometime next week. I'm not sure how long questions, but we're going to get to all of them. So let me once again thank my staff, my wonderful staff that helped figure out the technology and to help me get prepared so that we can do this. And to tell you that probably in a not too distant future, we'll have another town hall. This time I think we're going to focus on mental health issues. Because I'm telling you, I'm tired of being here. And I know everyone else is. So maybe we can figure out some things that will make us all feel better. I do know one thing. This will pass. We will get past it. We will get through it. We will get through it together. And that's something I know and I believe to the bottom of my heart. So everybody on the screen, give everybody a hug. Come on, everybody a hug. Everybody give everybody a hug. And you at home, give everybody a hug too. Let's thank everybody. Let's thank everybody. Let's do some applause.
Jackie?
And to say to you, I am so proud of all of the people who participated, about all the people working in our district, and I'm so proud to represent Board District 5. Thank you very much and good night.